beloved teams, when they leave, it just doesn't make sense why the heck they would leave and all that. But for some people, like, living in cities that, you gotta love, you love your team, and then all of a sudden it disappears without a trace, without any expectation and all that. Like, you had to feel in the NFL for the Houston Oilers, like they're moving to Tennessee, and the Love You Blue fans basically losing the team. You had to be feeling for Winnipeg and Quebec fans. Winnipeg for losing the Jets the first time, and the Nordiques for losing the team to Colorado and all of that. You got to feel for, like, Brooklyn fans when they lost their team to Los Angeles to be the LA Dodgers. In the NBA, there are some sour notes and all that, but one big sour note is the city of Seattle, who lost their team due to a stupid owner who basically was in it for himself and for nothing else. Didn't want to renovate the home arena that is now renovated and actually looks a bit better nowadays because it's the home of a hockey team. So, anyway, this one's for you, Jason Lindgren. I'm going to be talking about the Seattle Sonics, and I'm going to be talking about the 1994 team, the team that was the one seed in the West when MJ was not around and should have went to the NBA Finals. We're playing basketball sims. We're playing basketball sims. He's playing What If NBA. Cutter's doing What If NBA. Yeah. Oh, all the teams around the world got to know that the Raptors are number one. But what about the Bulls, Wizards, and Pistons? They all have great what ifs. Stories about old teams like the Kansas City Kings and maybe even the Minneapolis Lakers. But we all know we're going to do some basketball. He's doing basketball. He's doing basketball. What ifs? Cutter's doing what if NBA? So what if NBA? So let's talk about the Seattle Supersonics. Basketball came to the Pacific Northwest in the form of the Seattle Sonics in 1968. They were a very good team. They had a very good outlook on things. And in the 1970s, the Sonics took off like a supersonic jet. So the Sonics were pretty good in the 70s. They had Gus Williams, they had Jack Sikma, they had Lenny Wilkins as a player. They were doing quite good. And in 1978, they went to the NBA Finals, lost. Okay, well, sometimes it's good to make the finals and lose. But in 1979, they did much better. They beat Washington and won the series in 7. They took home the 1979 NBA crown, and basketball in the Pacific Northwest would boom. Portland won it in 1977, but Seattle took it 2 years later. And Gus Williams was iconic. So, anyhow, the fact of the matter is that the Sonics were pretty much open for business, if you will. And in the 1980s, they were okay. Sigma was getting older. Gus Williams was getting older. They were decent. Like, nothing big in the 1980s with the Sonics franchise, as far as I know, because I'm trying not to cheat and have to go on wiki. Seattle in the 90s were good. They drafted Kerry Payton, they drafted Sean Kemp, and basically life was going to be good. That, these two guys were going to give Seattle a championship. 92, they had a famous series against Golden State that they would tomahawk jam all over the Warriors, but didn't get too far. The Sonics I believe they went to the conference finals or semifinals in 1993. Got taken out by the Phoenix Suns. And then, 94, we'll talk about 1994 a little later. The Sonics in 96 did make the finals and all that, as Denlef Schrempf joined Payton and Kemp as big names and all that on the Sonics. And I think Hersey Hawkins was also a big name. So what ended up happening was that the Sonics got to the finals to take on the Chicago Bulls. It was MJ versus the Sonics. Seattle did win a few games, but in Game 6 back in Chicago, MJ had a memorable game and won the championship on Father's Day. And of course, every basketball fan knows that in 1993, MJ lost his dad, who was gunned down while resting on the side of the road before going to a friend's wedding. And that's one of the main reasons why MJ decided to leave basketball because he wanted to play baseball in honor of his dad. So the Sonics were decent in the 90s, and then they had a transitional phase and all that. By the mid 2000s, they weren't really the best team around, but they weren't the worst. In 2007, they actually had the second overall pick in the draft next to their Pacific Northwest neighbors, Portland, who decided to take Greg Oden because they need some power at center, like a good big man and all that. Unfortunately, this would be just like Sam Bowie in 1984 for Portland, that they drafted the wrong guy, and that the next guy, was the game changer. For Portland in 1984, it was Sam Bowie they drafted, and then they went to Michael Jordan. And Portland grouped up again. 2007, Greg Oden was drafted. Who was next? Seattle picked Kevin Durant. That's right. KD was a member of the Seattle Supersonics for one season before Clay Williams or whatever the fuck his name is. His name isn't important. Decided to buy the Sonics, and then all of a sudden, the next year, he decides to ship them to Oklahoma City, saying that there's money in Oklahoma. He didn't want to redo the stadium and all that. And Seattle was pissed. They were going to lose a team that won the NBA Finals at least once. And, Seattle would be without basketball and all that. They still had football, they still had baseball, but still, it was horrible. One of the worst owners in NBA history. And that's saying a lot when I talk about that with the whole fact about Donald Sterling, as I said in the last video too. So what ends up happening is that there's been rumors that Seattle was going to get it's going to get an NBA team. Once they expand to 32 teams, Seattle's definitely going to get one more chance, and fans wanted it. Of course, the fans were upset when Oklahoma City ended up going to the NBA Finals a couple times and doing well. So obviously, I haven't done an Oklahoma City. What if, because the Thunder, as of this taping, are in the Western Finals against Minnesota. So basically, I can't really do that yet until they're eliminated or win the championship. So, nevertheless, Seattle deserved better. Let's talk about one of the big dominoes that fell for Seattle in the 94 team. So, the 94 Sonics was the 26th season in their existence. They picked up Detlef from Indiana and acquired Kendall Gill from Charlotte. They were actually 26-3 to start, which was amazing. They were the best team in the All Star break and won 63 games. It was the number one in the Western Conference and the best team in the NBA by win and loss. It was the first time since 1979 they were the number one seed in the Western Conference. Of course, that was the year they won the title. So anyway, Kemp and Payton were both selected for the All Star game, and George Karl got to coach the team. Ricky Pierce did well off the bench, but had injuries. Nate McMillan and Sam Perkins also helped out much. Payton was actually third in most improved voter ranking. And then, of course, in the first round against the Denver Nuggets, who were lucky to get there, they were up to against the none but lost the last three games. Now, for context, the NBA had a best of five first round until 2003 when they made it best of seven. So if it was best of seven, maybe Seattle wins game 6 and 7. I don't know. Irvin Johnson gets drafted from the University of New Orleans. And Adonis Jordan, no relation to Michael. Anyway, Vince Askew was on the team. Michael Cage, the cagey guy from San Diego State, pun intended. Kendall Gill from Illinois. Irvin Johnson, Shannon Kemp from Trinity Valley Community College. Chris King, Rich King, Nate King. Just kidding. Nate McMillan from NC State. Gary Payton, the glove from Oregon State. Sam Perkins, Great Bay, North Carolina. MJ's college teammate. Ricky Pierce from Rice. Steve Scheffler and Detlef Shrimp. Little white guys. Anyway, Sonics won 63 games, were the best team in the West, and would take on the number 8 seed Denver Nuggets, who won 42 games, were barely above 500, but they were eighth by a long shot. As you see the chart, the next best team was the Lakers with 33 wins. So yeah, basically it was almost all for nothing. Anyway, the Sonics looked good, and then in game they crushed Denver in games 1 and 2, and it looked like it was over at Seattle Center's Coliseum. Game 3 and 4 at McNichols saw Shrimp doing his best, but they lost game 4 in overtime, which probably would have been a game changer. But game 5 was when things happened. They had to shoot a clutch 3 pointer to force overtime, but fumbled in overtime. And the famous shot of Dikembe Mutombo getting the last rebound of overtime and then falling on the floor with the basketball up on his head saying, "Oh my God." And the Sonics were the first number 1 seed to fall to an 8 seed in history. Of course, hockey would also actually was after hockey when the 8 seed San Jose Sharks beat the number 1 seed Detroit Red Wings in the Western playoffs. Of course, that was the first year the NHL went 1-8, and not division rounds. So yeah, it was like, what the fuck? What's going on? Alfonso Ford played too. Sean Kemp went to the All NBA second team, which means like the second, like the tops from 6 to 10, if you will. Yeah, they won 63 games. They did lose Eddie Johnson and Derek McKee via trade, but I think that was a trade with Indiana to get Devon Shrimp. Yeah, they traded Eddie Barrows and Eddie Johnson to Charlotte for Kendall Gill, and then traded McKee and Jared Patio for Devon Shrimp. It was pretty amazing. But yeah, so the Sonics fumbled that first round. Who knows what would have happened if it was best of 7 instead of best of 5? But yeah, the Denver Nuggets took care of them and went on to the second round. What would have happened if the Sonics did get to the second round? All right, so the 63 win Seattle Supersonics would have faced the Utah Jazz. Now, in basketball, unlike hockey, they don't reseed. So whoever wins the 1-8 matchup would face the 4-5 winner. And Utah was the team Denver had to face. And Utah easily, well, Utah, yeah, I think Utah and Denver went to game 7. Denver almost did it again. But nevertheless, the Sonics would have hosted the Jazz in the second round. What would have happened? Let's find out. Game 1 saw the Sonics were 113-103. Stockton was named player of the game, even though that he was on the losing side. Their bench of Tom Chambers, former Phoenix icon Tyrone Corbin, David Benwell, Walter Bond, Jay Humphries, and John Crotty. The Sonics, all their starters except for Cage with double digits, Peyton Gill, Shrimp, Perkins. Ricky Pierce, 19 points in 18 minutes off the bench. Pretty good. With Askew and Sean Kemp. I think Sean Kemp should be the starter, but yeah, but you can't put him at center. You can't put Perkins at center. So Sean Kemp has to come in and off the bench. But he did, but he was a 13 guy. So I think I'm going to put Kemp at center and Cage down there. Yeah, I think I have to in a sense. Because I'm like, Sean Kemp should be starter. I think so too. Game 2 would see the Sonics win 119-103 ish. Sean Kemp does put 22 points, 10 rebounds up on the Jazz. Carl puts up 23 points. Jeff Malone, 17. Jeff Hornacek, 14 points in 3 minutes off the bench. Why the hell is Hornacek not playing that much? John Crotty, Stephen Howard, Aaron Williams, Dave Jamerson, and Darren Morningstar doing the job. Sonics, 22 from Kemp, 16 from Sherman Perkins, Kill Olympian, 15. Scheffler, Chris, and Richard, and Alfonso Ford. Alfonso Ford, 10 points off the bench in garbage time. Head to Utah for game 3. And it would be the Sonics winning 104-94 as Shrimp put up 31 points. Sean Kemp put up 23 points. Yeah, Kemp's much better off the bench. Cage, 10 points in 19 minutes off the bench. 22 from Stockton, 20 from Carl Malone. Everyone else just can score. Tom Chambers, 12 points off the bench. Dave Jamerson. Game 4 would see the Sonics win narrowly, as Sean Kemp remember who the heck he was, and they sweep the Jazz and move on to the NBA semifinals. It was high scorer Kemp, 11 points off the bench for Ricky Pierce, 25 from Stockton, 23 from Carl. And the Jazz are OUT. Because I believe, yeah, of course, Houston would be next in line. The 94 team. 58 wins for Houston. Game one sees the Rockets lose to the Sonics 99-92. Sean Kemp with 22 rebounds, remembering who the heck he was. Hakeem 17, Otis 14, Ferdinand 10, Robert Ory 14, the Jet Smith 6. Mario Ellie 16 points off the bench. Well, it's not too easy because Maxwell and Ori were decent. I believe Ellie, was it? No, it was Maxwell who the next season would actually leave and discuss. Carl Herrera, Scott Brooks, former OKC head coach Sam Cassell, great player, and Eric Riley off the bench. 16. Everyone scored double digits for Seattle. 12 points from Ricky Pierce off the bench in 22 minutes. Today, game two would see the Sonics lose 108-106 as Hakeem remember who the heck he was. Vernon put up 20 points as well. Riley 12 points off the bench. 24 from Perkins, 23 from Payton. And the bench just doesn't work out that way. So it's 1-1, headed to game three. And the Sonics win game three thanks to Gary Payton using his glove-like stuff to get 3 steals. Payton and Trent both put 24. Pierce 13 off the bench. 33 from Hakeem off the bench. Well, off the floor. Marielli 10 points. Game four would see the Sonics lose again as the Rockets, Hakeem 31.16 rebounds, forces at least a game six. People just couldn't score for Seattle as much. But Hakeem was there, 31 points, the dream shake, as they call it. Back to game five, when Seattle would get their butts handed to them by the Rockets, 106-94. So Seattle is in deep trouble. Hakeem, 31 points, 17 rebounds, remembering who the heck he was. They emptied the bench. Richard Petruska, Chris Gent, Larry Robinson, not the former hockey player, Earl Carlton, and Matt Bullard. For Rockets icon in the mid 90s. Sonics, everyone got 18 points. Ricky Pierce, 11 points. They put Scheffler, King, and Ford in. Game six in Houston would see the Rockets choke. Seattle had a chance to, well, Houston had a chance to win game six, but they couldn't. Just Hakeem, 33 points, 10 rebounds, and the loss. Kendall Gill got 6 points. Campbell got 17. 33 from Hakeem, only with 11. So it was on to game numero set. And game seven would be a win for the Rockets. So Seattle would have went to game seven and blown it to Houston. Hakeem, 33.16 rebounds, remembering who the heck he was. So Hakeem would have done his job, and Houston would have went to the finals as is. Seattle would have had great chance, but Houston would have won game seven in Seattle. Hakeem, 33 points. And maybe Hakeem embraces the ball. Pierce, 18 points off the bench, but yeah, Hakeem probably would have embraced the ball, and Seattle would have ended up falling flat on their faces. So unfortunately, that happened. So that happened, Jason Lindgren. That happened. Hakeem screwed you over. Just saying. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. 02.